Representative Katie Porter did it again with her whiteboard on full display. She questioned the CEO of a pharmaceutical company known as AbbVie amid allegations that the company had inflated its drug prices. Now, there are two different drugs that are in question here. I'll give you the details in just a minute. But during this House Oversight and Reform Committee hearing, she grilled Richard Gonzalez, the CEO of AbbVie, on why the company has actually invested far less on research and development and far more on enriching himself than other executives at the company. Watch.
Mr. Gonzalez, how much did AbbVie spend on litigation and settlements from 2013 to 2018?
I don't have that number offhand. We'll be happy to give it to you.
Okay, $1.6 billion, $2.45 billion on R&D, $1.6 billion in litigation and settlements. What about marketing and advertising? How much does AbbVie spend on that?
Well, marketing and advertising, we spend about $4 billion a year.
Yep, 4.7, 1 billion. How about executive compensation, 2013 to 2018?
2013 to 2018, it's probably on average about $60 million a year.
Try 334 on for size. Now, how much did AbbVie spend on stock buybacks and stock buybacks and dividends to enrich your shareholders from 2013 to 2018?
Well, stock buybacks, if you actually look at just pure stock buybacks, it would be about $13 billion.
Stock buybacks and dividends is the question, sir.
Dividends, and have to come back with a number for that over that period of time.
$50 billion.
It's just so delicious. It's so delicious that I want more. I want a second helping. Please give me a second helping, guys.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, you're spending all this money to make sure you make money rather than spending money to invest in, develop drugs, and help patients with affordable life-saving drugs. You lie to patients when you charge them twice as much for an unimproved drug, and then you lie to policymakers when you tell us that R&D justifies those price increases. The big pharma fairy tale is one of groundbreaking R&D that justifies astronomical prices. But the pharma reality is that you spend most of your company's money making money for yourself and your shareholders. And the fact that you're not honest about this with patients and with policymakers, that you're feeding us lies, that we must pay astronomical prices to get innovative treatments is false. The American people, the patients, deserve so much better.
We're so used to members of Congress being completely disconnected from the very people that they represent, that moments like this stand out because this is what members of Congress should be like. They should be prepared, they should be willing to represent their constituents. I mean, this is the bare minimum, but more importantly, they should be willing to speak truth to power. And we live in this system with legalized bribery that overwhelmingly influences lawmakers to work against the best interests of their constituents. So to see Katie Porter, it's the best feeling to see lawmakers represent the people as opposed to corporations and private industry. It's fantastic. Now, I want to give you a little more context, but before I do, let me also note that this is not just indicative of the business practices with pharmaceutical companies. You see this with private industry throughout. For instance, when Donald Trump successfully passed his 2017 tax cuts for the rich, the whole story around that, the story that was sold to the American people was, well, we need to do this. We need to lower the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% because we need to create jobs. These companies, these corporations are gonna use the tax windfall to create more jobs and to pay higher wages. That's what they do, folks. Except they didn't do that. They took that money, they took the savings, and they enriched themselves and their shareholders. They did corporate stock buybacks, record corporate stock buybacks in the first quarter after those tax cuts for the rich were passed. Now, to give you some more context into this line of questioning that Katie Porter had, the Oversight and Reform Committee during Tuesday's hearing announced a call from House Democrats for the Federal Trade Commission to investigate AbbVie for its pricing of Humira, the best-selling drug in the United States and internationally, which treats rheumatoid arthritis and other inflammatory diseases. Now, to give you a sense of how much money AbbVie has made from Humira, it generated $3.9 billion in the United States alone during the first quarter of this year, a 7% increase. And the way that they were able to do that was to did they improve the drug? Of course not. The drug is unchanged, it's the same. They just increased the price. For the first time, no. Second time, no. For the 27th time, they raised the price of that drug 27 times, even though they didn't do anything to improve it, because they just want to make more money. That's it, that's all it is. But that's not the only drug. I mentioned that there were two drugs, Humira is one of them. Imbruvica is the second one, and that's a blood cancer medication, which they raised the price of 9 times. Now, Humira, a drug used to treat rheumatoid arthritis, other autoimmune diseases and gastrointestinal conditions such as Crohn's, was released in 2003 when the company was Abbott Laboratories. Don't forget that name, Abbott Laboratories is important. And usually these shady companies love to rebrand themselves. AbbVie has since raised the cost 27 times and by more than 470%, with an annual supply now costing more than $77,000. Imagine that. If you need this drug to improve your quality of life, it'll cost you $77,000. Why? I mean, we know other countries aren't paying that kind of money. Also, meanwhile, AbbVie, in conjunction with Janssen Biotech, has increased the price of Imbruvica, a drug used to treat mantle cell lymphoma and other cancers, by 82% since it launched in 2013. That year, for a patient taking 3 pills per day, the drug was priced at $99,776 annually. Today, it's priced at $181,529. For patients taking 4 pills each day, it costs $242,039. Who can afford that? I mean, it's out of control. And remember, us US taxpayers spend quite a bit of money on the research and development. For instance, remember, I wanted you to remember Abbott Laboratories because that's relevant to this story. Well, in 2017, the National Institutes of Health accounted for the lion's share of federal spending in medical and health research in 2017, and that's $32.4 billion or 82.1%. National Institute of Health, US taxpayers, we're funding the research and development. If we're doing it, why would they, right? They're gonna take the money that they have and are they gonna invest in research and development? Maybe a little bit, but they love dividends, they love corporate stock buybacks. That's what they're gonna focus on. In the meantime, they're gonna go ahead and gouge us, even though we helped fund their research and development. But what about Abbott Laboratories specifically, right? We know what the National Institutes of Health spend on pharmaceutical research and development overall in a given year. But how much has Abbott Laboratories taken in taxpayer-funded research and development? Well, I have some specific figures for you. Some early research on Norvir, that's one of the drugs that they produce. One of the first protease inhibitors marketed in 1996 was funded by the NIH grants to Abbott Laboratories. The company says the grants totaled $3.47 million, and that it had spent more than $300 million to conduct clinical trials and bring the drug to market. Abbott, based in North Chicago, raised the price of a daily dose of that drug, by the way, to $8.57 from $1.75 in December of 2003, setting off a firestorm of protests from doctors and AIDS activists and prompting calls from several lawmakers for the NIH to examine the case. So the NIH is like, yo, we spent some money on the research and development of this very drug, and now you guys are price gouging American citizens. What's up with that? We gotta look into it. And guess what? They did look into it. So you would think that maybe the government would do the right thing and try to check them as they're price gouging us. But that's not what happened. The federal government decided against forcing drug maker Abbott Laboratories to roll back a 5-fold price increase on the AIDS drug developed in part with taxpayer money. It's how it works, folks. It's how it works. Corruption, unfettered capitalism, turning healthcare into something that is not a human right in America, a privilege in America, a commodified privilege in America. That's what our healthcare industry really is. When it comes to the pharmaceutical companies, when it comes to actual health insurance, all of it is meant to gouge us, provide us with crappier care and coverage compared to other countries, of course, European countries, Canadian countries. And we are incredibly price gouged, even though we help fund the research and development of these drugs. So I thank Katie Porter for that line of questioning because it opened up an opportunity to talk about that angle as well. But I would love to see members of Congress bring up the fact that we are funding the research and development of the very drugs that were later price gouged on.
Hey everyone, as you all know, coronavirus has been pretty devastating for people's personal finances. The inaction in Congress or the very little relief that was provided by Congress, unfortunately didn't do much to help small businesses that were really hurt by being forced to shut down in order to slow the spread of coronavirus. There are 100,000 small businesses that have been closed since the pandemic began. Some of you might feel helpless, but luckily there's this wonderful initiative known as the COVID Rescue Fund. So all you need to do is go to covidrescuefund.org and you'll learn more about how you can donate or how you can vote and promote your favorite small business. And really the whole point here is to offer generous grants to help these small businesses. The COVID Rescue Fund crowdsources up to $100,000 for each individual grant. So we're not talking about a small amount of money. I've seen small businesses in my community shut down, and these are small businesses where I had relationships with the owners, and to watch them lose everything that they've worked so hard for has been absolutely heartbreaking. I really wanted to do something then, and I'm happy to see that there's an initiative that could help people get involved now. Go to covidrescuefund.org and donate. Let's come together and bring back as many small businesses as possible.